The sun hadn't fully risen, but the streets were already humming. Early buses grumbled past cracked sidewalks. The city moved fast, as if it had no time for those who had nothing. Yet, at the corner of an old gas station, a small boy stood. Barefoot on the cold concrete, a dirty rag in one hand and a dented bucket in the other. His name was Jalen. He was just 10 years old. Thin like the wind could blow him away. His skin the shade of midnight. His eyes heavy with stories too deep for his age. His shirt, once white, now hung in grays and browns, and his jeans were held together by patches and faith. He didn't beg. He didn't steal. He worked. For school. Each morning, Jalen filled his bucket with water from the station's back tap, poured in a squirt of dish soap he'd borrowed weeks ago, and stood by the roadside. Cars lined up at the red light, their windows rolled up, music loud, eyes forward. Sometimes a driver nodded, most ignored him. But Jalen didn't mind. He wasn't there for kindness. He was there to earn, one car at a time, $1 closer to his dream. He had no parents, no last name, no one to call home. He lived behind the old laundromat on Jasper Street, sleeping beneath a cardboard shelter tucked between rusting dryers and dumpsters that smelled like grease. At night, he traced words from torn pages of a math workbook he had saved from a trash bin. He read. Slowly, he wrote carefully. And when it rained, he held the book against his chest like it was his only family. Because it was. Jalen had a secret, a powerful, burning hope to return to school. He had once tasted that life, years ago, before he was left at a shelter and then pushed into the cracks of a system that forgot him. Since then, school had become a dream as distant as the stars, yet close enough to keep him going. One Friday morning, just like any other, a sleek black car pulled into the station. Tinted windows, chrome rims. The kind of car Jalen never touched, unless the driver waved him over. But that day, the driver didn't. He was on the phone, distracted. And yet, he didn't drive away when Jalen approached. The boy dipped his rag in the bucket, his hands trembling from the cold, and began to wipe down the door. He worked with care, starting from the rear wheel to the mirror, then the handle, moving like an artist touching up a painting. He didn't know who the man inside was. He didn't know the name Marcus or that this man, dressed in a suit that cost more than Jalen had seen in his life, was silently staring at him through the rearview mirror. Marcus saw something that morning. He didn't know what, just something. In the boy's eyes, a flicker, a familiarity, something long buried. He didn't roll down the window. He didn't say a word. He just watched. And for a moment, just a moment, his chest ached in a way it hadn't in years. Then the light turned green. The engine purred. And the black car disappeared into the blur of the city. Jalen didn't even look up. He simply squeezed the rag, moved to the next car, and kept going. That night, he counted his earnings. $4.35. Still not enough for the enrollment fee. Still not enough for shoes. But enough for bread. Enough to survive. As he curled beneath the laundry vent that night, the workbook resting on his stomach, a whisper of cold wind slipped through the alley. And miles away, Marcus couldn't sleep. A photograph on his desk stared at him. A photo of a baby boy who vanished 10 years ago, his brother. The city had swallowed many stories, but some refused to stay buried. And one of them had just washed his car. Before we continue this story, take a moment to think. How many children like Jalen are out there? Alone, forgotten, yet still holding on to dreams that no one sees. If this story has touched your heart, help us share more voices like his. Click the subscribe button now and be part of something bigger than a story. A reminder that hope still lives, even in the quiet corners of the world. Before we continue, if this story has moved you, don't forget to subscribe now so you won't miss the rest of Jalen's journey and many more stories that speak straight to the heart. The morning after, the city wore its usual disguise: busy, loud, uncaring. Taxis sped through puddles left by an early drizzle, and the sidewalks buzzed with people chasing time. No one noticed the boy crouched at the corner of the gas station. His knees tucked to his chest, his breath misting in the cold. Jalen was awake, but his body moved slower than usual. His legs ached, his stomach was hollow. He had eaten only bread the night before, and that too had to be shared with a stray dog he couldn't ignore. But still, he was there, at his post before the sun had a chance to fully rise, because dreams don't wait. And school still felt like a mountain he had to climb. He dunked his rag in the bucket, water turning gray with every rinse. Car after car passed by. Some handed him quarters. Others didn't even glance, but Jalen didn't frown. He kept scrubbing, kept wiping, kept hoping. Across the city, in a tall glass building with views of the skyline, Marcus stood by his office window. Untouched coffee on his desk, hands in his pockets. He was a man who had everything: wealth, status, a growing business. But that morning, his mind was not on profits or deals. It was on the boy from the gas station. All night, something had gnawed at him, a strange ache, a hollow in his memory. The boy's face, his eyes had echoed something familiar, something painful, a memory he had locked away long ago. A memory of a brother who was taken too soon. A brother named Jalen. He remembered the fire, the screaming, the confusion. The day everything changed, their mother had died in the blaze. Their home destroyed. And in the chaos, the baby, his brother, had vanished. No one knew if he had escaped. No one claimed to have seen him. The city said he was lost. The system failed. And the guilt had eaten Marcus alive for years. He had been just 16 then. A scared teenager suddenly alone in the world. Now he was a man. But the pain still had claws. And the boy. That boy. Why did he feel so familiar? At the gas station, Jalen was cleaning the windshield of another car when a gust of wind knocked over his bucket. Soapy water spilled onto the pavement, his last rags soaked in dirt. He sighed, not in defeat but in silence. He had learned to carry disappointment without tears. He stood there, unsure of what to do next, his hands trembling from exhaustion. Just then, a silver sedan pulled into the station. Not Marcus. Not yet. But someone who would unknowingly shift the next piece of fate into place. An older woman in a gray coat stepped out. She saw the boy, looked once. Then again, there was something about the way he stood. Something in his posture that reminded her of someone from her past. She didn't say anything. She simply handed him a few dollars and drove off. But the moment stayed with her. Jalen tucked the money into his pocket, not knowing that this woman would soon play a part in a story bigger than either of them could imagine. That night, Marcus sat in front of his computer. He searched the city's missing children's archives. He typed in dates. He opened files he hadn't dared to revisit in years, and there it was, a grainy photo of a baby with dark skin and wide eyes. The name, Jalen Turner. Age, 1 year. Status, disappeared. Marcus stared at it for a long time. His hands clenched. His breath slowed. The boy from the gas station. His face. His eyes. Could it be? The next morning, Marcus made a decision. He would return to that corner, to the boy with the rag. He needed to know the truth, because if he was right, the brother he thought was lost had been standing just feet away. The morning broke with a heavy sky. Clouds gathered low, whispering rain but never letting it fall. The city was restless, as if something unseen stirred beneath its concrete veins. And once again, Jalen was there kneeling beside his bucket, dipping the same rag into cold water, his tiny frame fighting the wind that pushed at his back. Today felt different, not because of the weather, but because he had counted his money the night before. And for the first time, he was close. Just a few more dollars. Just one more day, maybe two. Then school. He could almost hear the sound of chalk on a board. Almost picture his name written on paper, not just in his dreams. Across town, Marcus drove slower than usual. He wasn't the kind of man who had time for distractions. His life was built on schedules, meetings, efficiency. But today, he found himself circling through streets he hadn't driven in years. Back to that gas station. Back to that corner. His heart wasn't racing, but something inside him pulsed. Like a quiet drum. He had told no one, not his assistant, not his friends, not even the few family members left in his circle. Because what could he say? I think I saw my baby brother washing cars on the street. Even in his own mind, the thought sounded like a ghost. But still he returned. When he arrived, the traffic light had just turned red. He spotted the boy. Same shirt. Same jeans. Same determined eyes. Jalen stood near the curb, wiping the hood of a beat-up pickup. The sleeves of his shirt were soaked, clinging to arms too thin for a child. His shoes, if they could still be called, that had holes where his toes peaked. Out, yet his face remained calm, unbothered, focused on Marcus, parked across the street. He didn't approach. He just watched something in him hesitated. Fear. Guilt. Hope. What if he was wrong? What if he wasn't? His thoughts wrestled in silence as Jalen moved on to another car. This time, a man waved him away, annoyed. Jalen stepped back without a word, eyes lowering, and then returned to his bucket. At that moment, Marcus noticed something, a scar small, just above the boy's left eyebrow. A scar Marcus remembered. He had given it to his baby brother accidentally one day, while playing too roughly in their tiny living room. A fall, a cry, a bandage. A moment that became memory. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his chest tightening. It was him. It had to be. But still. How? Why was his brother here? Why had no one found him? Why had he grown up alone? The questions burned like fire beneath his ribs, and just then, Jalen looked up. Their eyes met across the street, only for a second. Jalen didn't know who the man was. He didn't recognize the tailored suit or the car, or the way Marcus was staring like he had just seen a miracle and a ghost in the same breath. Jalen simply blinked, then looked away. To him, it was just another man. Another car. Another passing stranger. But Marcus didn't move. He knew this wasn't something he could walk away from. Still, he didn't get out of the car. He drove off, the way he had before. But his heart stayed behind. That night Jalen didn't sleep. Had made enough to buy a new notebook, clean pages. A blank start. He held it like treasure. He didn't know the man in the suit. Had stared at him for almost 10 minutes. He didn't know that man was blood. But soon, very soon, everything he thought he knew was going to shatter. The city never really slept, but at dawn, it softened. Sirens faded into the distance. The hum of traffic became a gentle rhythm. And in that quiet, while the world still blinked itself awake, Jalen sat alone in the alley behind the laundromat, cradling his most prized possession. A notebook. Brand new, clean pages, untouched corners. The smell of fresh paper gave him goosebumps. It had taken him weeks to save for it. And now, under the leaking glow of a flickering lamp, he pressed his pencil against the first page with a trembling hand. He didn't know many words, but he tried. He wrote his name, Jalen. Big, careful letters. Letters he had learned by copying the signs outside school fences he could never enter. That single word, his name, filled the whole page. Because to him, it meant everything. It meant he existed. He mattered. Across the city, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, eyes sunken, papers spread before him. He hadn't gone to the office. He hadn't answered calls. His mind had locked onto the past, refusing to let go. Photos, adoption records, shelter reports, everything he could find about the baby, who vanished a decade ago. But there was nothing. Just one thin trail, a shelter report dated 9 years ago, about a toddler found abandoned at a bus station with a torn blanket and no name. The child was never claimed, placed into foster care. Then, nothing. No school enrollment, no adoption finalization. A ghost in the system. Marcus stared at the report. Age, approximately 1 year. Race, black. Identifying marks, small scar above left eyebrow. At hand. How had the system lost him? How had no one cared? Marcus had spent years believing his brother had died. But now, that boy, his brother, was wiping windshields on the street to buy notebooks. Not toys, not games. A notebook. His eyes burned, not with shame but fury. He had built an empire, yet failed the one person who needed him most. The next day, Jalen returned to the station. His notebook was tucked into a plastic bag, hidden behind a dumpster, safe from rain. He worked harder than usual. Every car he cleaned brought him closer to a dream. School enrollment was just dollars away. But as he worked, he didn't know that someone was watching from a distance. Marcus stood in a nearby alley, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, invisible to the world. He watched the boy wash each car with care. No skipping corners, no rushing. Just quiet, determined effort. Not for praise, not for coins, but for dignity. He followed the boy when he finished. Watched him disappear down a narrow alley behind the laundromat. Watched him pull a plastic bag from beneath a trash bin. Watched him smile as he pulled out a notebook like it was made of gold. And Marcus broke. He stepped forward, heart pounding, but then froze. What was he supposed to say? What if the boy didn't believe him? What if this hope he carried unraveled with one wrong word? So instead, he left something behind. A note. Folded. Simple. No name. Just a message. He slipped it into the boy's bucket and disappeared. Jalen returned. Later that night, tired and cold, he reached into the bucket to empty it and found the note. 4 words. Written in neat, careful script. You are not alone. Jalen stared at it for a long time. He didn't know who wrote it. He didn't know why. But for the first time in a long while, he smiled, not because he was full, not because he was warm, but because someone, somewhere had seen him, and just maybe, they were coming back. The night pressed heavy over the city, but for Jalen, the dark no longer felt so cold. He lay curled in his usual spot behind the laundromat, the crumpled note resting on his chest like a blanket of hope. You are not alone. 4 words that refused to leave his mind. 4 words that lit a fire in a heart that had almost forgotten how to feel warmth. For years, Jalen had moved through life like a shadow, forgotten, unseen. But now someone had noticed him. Someone had spoken, not with a voice, but with a message that pierced through his loneliness like morning sun through fog. He didn't know who. He didn't dare imagine. But deep inside, something shifted. He mattered. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his parked car 2 blocks away, watching the alley like a silent guardian. His world, once driven by ambition and control, had tilted. His suits felt heavier, his office colder, and nothing made sense anymore except for the boy sleeping near a dumpster with nothing but a notebook and a dream. He had made calls, quiet ones, hired a private investigator, pulled every string he could. Records were beginning to surface. A foster placement that never stuck. A missing child report that had been closed without answers. A system too broken to notice the life slipping through its cracks. And now he knew the truth. The boy wasn't just someone's child. He was his brother. The only family he had left. But the deeper pain was this. While Marcus had climbed toward power, his brother had fallen into survival. While Marcus had dined in boardrooms, Jalen had eaten scraps in silence. And the guilt wrapped itself around his chest like iron. He couldn't rush this. He couldn't just show up with papers and promises. He had to earn his way in. The next morning, before Jalen arrived at the gas station, Marcus placed a small paper bag inside the bucket. It contained a sandwich, a bottle of juice, and another note. "Keep going, you are seen." When Jalen found it, he didn't look around. He just sat on the curb and ate slowly, savoring every bite like it was a feast. He didn't remember the last time someone fed him without expecting anything in return. Without judgment. Without pity. And though no one stood beside him, he didn't feel alone. Not anymore. Across the street, hidden behind the tinted glass of his car, Marcus watched in silence. His eyes were wet, not from grief, but from the overwhelming ache of lost time. Still, the question haunted him. How do you tell someone you're their brother when you've been gone all their life? He wanted to walk over, kneel beside the boy, hold him, tell him everything, but fear held him back. Not fear of rejection, fear of hurting him again, of disturbing the fragile hope that had just begun to bloom in Jalen's heart. So he waited until the right moment. And that moment came faster than either of them expected. Later that afternoon, as Jalen finished wiping down a delivery van, two older boys approached from the alley, bigger, loud, the kind that fed off fear. They shoved Jalen aside, laughed, grabbed the few coins he had made, and kicked over his bucket. He didn't fight. He never did, but someone else did. Marcus had seen enough. In seconds, he was out of his car, crossing the street like a man on fire. His voice, a voice used to commanding boardrooms, boomed across the lot. The boys scattered, startled, vanishing into the streets like ghosts in daylight. Jalen stood frozen. Marcus approached slowly, calmly. He didn't speak. Not yet. He simply bent down and picked up the spilled notebook from the ground. He dusted it off and handed it back to the boy. Their hands touched. And in that quiet, in that still moment, something ancient stirred between them. Not memory. Not words. Blood. Jalen didn't move. The man's hand was still holding out his notebook, creased at the edges, smudged with dirt, but still whole. For a moment, the boy just stared at him, unsure whether to run, to thank him, or to prepare for another stranger who might disappear again. But Marcus didn't leave. He didn't rush. He knelt down eye level with the boy and looked at him with something Jalen hadn't seen in anyone for as long as he could remember. Recognition. Not pity. Not confusion. Recognition. Marcus didn't speak, but everything in his face said what his lips couldn't yet form. I know you. I know who you are. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Not money, not food. A photograph. Old, worn. A picture of two children, one teenage boy, dark and lanky, and a chubby-cheeked baby in his arms, wide-eyed scar just above the brow. Jalen's brow. Marcus didn't offer it. He simply placed it gently on the boy's lap, then stepped back. Jalen stared at it. His fingers trembled as he picked it up. Looked closer. The baby, he didn't remember it. But the scar. The shape of the face. The way the eyes curved when they smiled. It was him. He knew it. And the teenager holding him. That face had come in flashes during dreams. He couldn't explain. The dreams where someone was calling his name. Softly. Lovingly. Jalen. He looked up at the man standing before him. His chest rose and fell in shaky breaths. He didn't ask who the man was. He didn't need to. Something deep inside already knew, and so did Marcus. He had spent 10 years searching for something he thought was lost in flames. 10 years building a life so big, hoping it might fill the hole left behind. 10 years running from the grief, the guilt, the silence. But now, that silence was broken not by words, but by presence. The boy he thought was dead stood alive before him. Wounded, tired, but alive. They didn't hug. Not yet. They didn't cry. Not yet. But their eyes stayed locked, and in that connection, an invisible thread began to pull tight. That evening, Marcus followed from a distance as Jalen returned to his alley. The boy paused at the entrance, looked at the photograph again, then sat down slowly, staring into space. He wasn't scared, he wasn't angry, he was overwhelmed. For so long he had been a ghost in his own world, unseen, unloved, unclaimed. Now, someone had come back for him, and not just anyone, his brother. Across the alley, Marcus leaned against a lamppost, unsure of what came next. He couldn't take him home yet, not without answers, not without doing it right. The boy had lived in survival for so long, he needed more than rescue. He needed restoration. That night, Jalen didn't sleep. He clutched the photo to his chest, the way he used to hold his notebook. And as the wind whispered through the alley, he closed his eyes and heard it again. Not a voice, not a sound, but a feeling. His name, spoken by someone who remembered. The sky was softer that morning, as if the city itself had paused to breathe. For the first time in a long while, Jalen didn't wake to hunger or cold, but to a stirring in his chest that felt different. A warmth that had nothing to do with the weather. A weight in his hands, not from work, but from truth. He was still in the alley, the cracked walls and broken concrete unchanged. But something within him had shifted. The photo remained tucked beneath his arm. He had looked at it all night, memorizing the faces like a sacred map. The baby with the scar was him. The boy holding him was someone he now knew wasn't a stranger, but his brother, and not just by blood, but by the way the man had protected him, the way he had watched without demanding, the way he had left food, not as charity, but as care. Quiet care. Gentle care. That morning, when he returned to the gas station, the bucket was already full. Clean water, fresh rags. A folded note rested on top. Would you meet me today? Not as a stranger, but as your brother. Jalen stared at the words, his heart thumping in his chest. He didn't hesitate. Later that afternoon, in the park across from the school he had always watched from behind the fence, Marcus waited. No driver, no suit. Just jeans, sneakers, and a nervous heart beating faster than it ever had before. He sat on a bench, the one near the broken swing. The photo rested beside him, a symbol of lost years. A prayer for a new beginning. And then, he saw him. Jalen. Walking slowly, notebook in one hand, the photo in the other. His steps unsure, but his eyes steady. They said nothing at first. Words would only weaken the moment. Marcus stood. Jalen stopped, just a few feet away. The distance between them was no longer measured in space, but in time. 10 long years. 10 birthdays. Missed. 10 winters without warmth. 10 summers without laughter. And now here they were. No longer apart. Marcus reached out his hand. Jalen didn't take it. He stepped forward instead, and wrapped his arms around his brother's waist, tightly, silently. And Marcus, who had held power and contracts and cold glass awards, finally held something real. His brother, his family. Later that evening, Marcus took Jalen not to a mansion, not to a boardroom, but to a small quiet apartment prepared just for him. Walls painted soft blue. A real bed, books, shoes, and in the corner, a school uniform folded neatly, waiting for the boy who had washed cars to earn his way back to class. Jalen didn't say much. He just walked slowly to the bed, placed his notebook beside the pillow, and sat down with his eyes full of something rare. Belonging. Marcus stood by the door, unsure if he should speak. But Jalen turned and gave the only words that mattered. You remembered my name. Marcus nodded. And for the first time in a decade, the name didn't echo in an empty house. It had come home.